The first few items in the GCSE specification are really things that you will have encountered some years ago. So Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 maybe, and they have to make sure that you understood those things and you have that foundation. Many students, in fact, get through Key Stages 2 and 3 without understanding certain basic topics for whatever reason. Maybe it was a bad teacher, maybe it just didn't click. But at GCSE we need those foundations, and so we have to begin by making sure that the basics are in place. And the very first one that you should know, but don't worry if you are not very good at this, this is the point of the video, and that is ordering numbers. And so if you think about numbers like 10, 12 and 17, 8, 1, 207 and so on, well, if we were asked to put them in order from the smallest to the largest, most people would be able to do that. That's the smallest, that's the next one, and then we have 12, then we have 17 and 59, 207. Okay, so I suppose that's pretty straightforward. If we have negative numbers, it's a bit different, isn't it? So if we had minus 17, minus 1, minus 8, minus 54, minus 5, say. Okay, so this time it's different, because of course on our number line, if you remember the number line, well, we have a number line, don't we, with the 0 in the middle, and then we have minus 1, then we have minus 2, and so on. Compared to the other side of the number line, so of course this is the opposite. So the larger numbers in their negative terms are smaller. Okay, so that means that we have to approach this a little bit differently. So the smallest here is going to be this minus 54, because minus 54 is right the way in the distant left regions. It's the smallest. So we'd say that was the smallest, and then we go to minus 17, and then minus 8, minus 5, and minus 1. Okay, so a little bit backwards, isn't it? But that's what we need to just remember. But still, I mean, most people would be able to cope even with the negative numbers. Well, perhaps then the awkward one is the decimals. A typical exam question might be, you know, they'll give you some numbers and they would make a lot of them similar. So we have lots of 2s and 1s, don't we? 0.2.12, and I really have just dreamt those ones up. So some of you might be able to instantly look at this and know which is the smallest and which is the next biggest and the next biggest. If that's you, then great. But most people are not like you. Most people look at these and they start to guess. They maybe think, well, I think that's the smallest, followed by maybe that one, or is it that one? And it's easy to get confused. And so I would say actually that we need a bit of a system. So if you're the type who looks at these and thinks, I'm starting to, my eyes are starting to go cross-eyed here with all these numbers, well, we need a system, don't we? So how about this then? Let's write these in columns. So we're gonna write these as neatly as we can. 0.21 first, then 0.22, and it's important that you keep the columns neat. Awful lot of students just, you know, they just can't keep things in any sort of a column. So take your time. I mean, mean, this is not brilliant, but it's good enough. So we can sort of see, I mean, maybe if I just drew a sort of that's a bit thick, isn't it? Something like that, and I'll just draw one there as well, and yeah. Oops. Just to really show you that we're keeping them roughly in these columns, and that's quite important. And you know what, I'm going to do one more because, well, you'll see why in a moment. So now what I'm going to do now is, I've got these, and these are all of different lengths, aren't they? So what I'm going to do is, for this 0.21, I'm going to just add a 0 there, and this one I'm going to add a 0 there. I'm just filling in these gaps with zeros to make the numbers equal length. And then you will maybe then be able to see why we're doing this. We can consider, if we sort of ignore the 0 point bit, we can consider this as 210. And we could pretend this one is 220, and this one is just, well, 21. And so by thinking of them as whole numbers, they're a lot easier, aren't they? A lot easier to place in order. And so we can see this one, ignore the zeros and that, so we've just got the number 12, so that's going to be the smallest, and then 21. It might even help, I don't know, you might want to maybe, I don't know, cross out the zeros that, you know, they're distracting you in any way. Cross them out, and there's a 0 in the front of a number. It makes no difference, does it? I might even just get rid of that as well. And you can see what we've done there. Now, you don't have to go to this length, but certainly it's a little bit clearer again, isn't it? That you've got 12. Oops. You have 12, 21. Then we've got the 120, so that's the next one. Then we've got the 200s, so we've got 210 and 220, and finally got 2,120 there. So we've now taken these, we've messed around with them to see more clearly how to put them in order. Now, it's important that you understand that in a question on an exam, they're not asking for all this which bear little resemblance to the original numbers. All this is just to help you get them in this order, okay? So now, for the purpose of the answer, you have to place them, either rewrite them or mark them according to this order, okay? So we would, we just pick a different colour. And so our first one was that one there, which we pretended was 12. Yeah, so that's what we do. We would write 0.12, yuck. Then we would go to that one there, wasn't it? So 0.021, and then that one, 0.12, and so on. And yeah, and so we would write them out like that. Or, as I say, if it's acceptable in the question, you might be able to, you know, you might be able to do that. You might be able to 1, 2, 3, then 4, then 5, and then 6. You might be able to just label them like that. And so this is really for those of you who, when they look at them, don't know straight away or start to get a bit confused about putting them in order. So remember, write them out in columns, making sure the decimal points are all aligned, and then either rub out or scrub out or just ignore any zeros at the front. We put some filler zeros in there, and we've sort of pretended that they're whole numbers, and they're much easier to put in order that way. And again, just remember, in your answer, don't leave this as your answer. It makes no sense to anyone who's marking it. So make sure you either, as I say, label the original numbers or rewrite them in the new order. And that's that. If you do that, you'll be able to order any decimals that you're given. Another type of question involving ordering numbers involves fractions, and so many students forget very quickly how to deal with fractions, and it's very common. But here's a type of question that you might be presented with. So we're given some fractions, 3/5, 13/15, and 2/5. So you may be asked to put these in ascending order, smallest first. Now, of course, we can't order them unless they're the same type of thing. We can't compare them unless they're the same type of fraction. And to do that, we make the denominators the same. So we need to get all these at the bottom the same number. And when they're the same number, they're the same type of thing, you can then order them. Okay. So you may know that we need to find some number that we can convert all these into. Now it just so happens that I know that each of these numbers, they are all factors of 15. They all go into or divide into 15. So we can convert them all to 15ths. And so now this one, of course, this one here is already in that form. So we can leave that as it is. This one, well, this is in thirds, so we need to get that denominator 3 up to 15. So you think about how we would multiply that to get into 15ths. Well, we would have to multiply that by 5 to get 15ths. Now if we multiply the bottom by 5, we have to multiply the top by the same amount. That's what we do with fractions, that's the rule. So we've multiplied this by 5 to get 15ths, so the numerator, the one at the top, must also be multiplied by 5. So 5 times 2 is 10. So there you go, we've converted that into 15ths. The same with this one, what are we going to do? We're going to make that those fifths into 15ths, and of course we have to multiply that by 3. We have to multiply the 5 by, whoops, you have to multiply that by 3. And so this is a right mess now. We have to multiply the top by the same. And so we have the numerator multiplied by 3 gives us 9. I won't do that all again, but for this one, well, to get our fifths into 15ths, we multiply it by 3, so we multiply the top by 3. We multiply the top by 3, we get 6. And so now, of course, because they're all 15ths, we can simply compare the numerators and put them in order. Okay, so what are we going to have? Well, of course, we've got that one first. No, we haven't. We've got that one first, then that one, then that one, and then that one. Now remember what I said earlier, that we cannot leave this sort of mess for the marker to pick up on. You need to put the original numbers in order. So we can see that this one we said was the smallest, so we would write in 2/5 first. Then there's this one, came second, which was originally 3/5. So we put 3/5 in, and so on. 2/3 next, and then finally 13/15. So we give the marker the answer which contains the original fractions, not the ones we converted to for the purpose of working. So that's it really for the fractions. And so if you found any of that confusing, it'll be likely because you have at this point in time a poor grasp of fractions, so you need to go back and do a bit of revision on that. If I can explain this any better, then please ask, and I'll make every effort to clarify anything in this section. Here are some symbols that you need to be aware of. Okay, well, this one is pretty simple, so that's equal to. Now the next one you may not have seen so much, but if I asked you to make an educated guess, you might say, well, it looks like equals to, and then someone scrubbed it out, which is right. So this one is not equal to, but you won't use that or see it very often. The ones you will see and you need to know are these ones, and they cause lots of difficulty. Okay, so you've definitely seen these, and most of you will probably have an idea that it's something to do with bigger numbers or smaller numbers, and you'd be spot on. However, there are a lot of students who get these things mixed up, and so teachers have gone to great lengths trying to explain in very imaginative ways how to remember which one's which. So you may even know that a couple of these are more than, and a couple of these are less than, but you're not sure which way. And you may have been unlucky enough in school to have been introduced to the idea of crocodiles, one of the worst ideas for teaching anything, crocodiles. And so the idea is that the student is told when they're younger that they're told to think of this like a crocodile's mouth, and one number eats another number, and all this. Well, students have explained it to me, and I was not impressed, because several students remembered it the wrong way round, and so if it can be confused so easily, I don't value it much. So I would recommend to them that they abandon all remembrance of crocodiles. Let's try and look at this a different way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just remind you about our number line. There you go, there's a number line. I'm going to make that a little bit skinnier. And so here's our number line. And like I said earlier, we have this sort of setup. Okay, so my view is this, that when we view these things, we view them with respect to the number line. And so let me draw one next to the number line. And so I'd like you to maybe when you think of that symbol, in your mind, just maybe recreate this. That's a very dodgy drawing, but it's supposed to be an arrow. And if you think of your sign here as the head of an arrow, well, if you refer to the number line, it's obvious that it's firing to the left, and left means you're getting smaller on the number line. So that's easy enough, isn't it? It's going to the left. So naturally, well, we're going to, if we pick this one, yeah. So again, just think of it as an arrowhead, and that's obviously going to the right, so it's bigger. So this is less than, and obviously that one's more than. Okay, so I hope that that way of remembering it is more useful to you than the other crocodile nonsense. We have only now really to mention these two, and you might like to view these in this way. So this one I'm going to draw it a bit bigger. I'm going to draw it like this, and you might notice that it's one of these, so it's going to be the same as that. So yeah, it's definitely less than, and it's got this other line under it. You probably know this already, but if I just rub that out, it might help you see. It's like a bit of an equal sign, isn't it, on a slope? And so we could say that this one is less than or equal to. It's two symbols combined, and naturally that one is more than or equal to. So I'm hoping that this daft little arrow sketch here might help you remember when you look at that to immediately see that that's going to the left, and on the number line it's less than, and you might see that one and assume that's pointing or firing to the right, and is therefore getting bigger on the number line. So I hope that's helped. So that's really the end of the N1 section in the specification. So if you do have any questions, of course you can always contact me through YouTube or through the web page. So thanks for listening, and good luck with your work.